There are new developments this morning in the case of George Smith, a Connecticut newlywed who disappeared in 2005. Until now, it appeared he fell off a cruise ship by accident. But as 48 Hours correspondent Susan Spencer reports, the FBI has evidence now raising the possibility of foul play.
A crimson stain spreads across white metal, dripping beneath the Mediterranean sun, blood on the bedsheets. And a groom who should have been celebrating the beginning of his life vanished into the dark waters below. What if your honeymoon, the most joyful moment of your life, became the opening scene of an unsolved murder? What if the people you laughed with hours earlier held the secrets of your final moments? On July 5th, 2005, George Allen Smith IV disappeared from his honeymoon cruise in circumstances so sinister they would haunt investigators, devastate a family, and expose the dark underbelly of safety at sea. This is the dark truth. We don't just tell stories, we unravel them. Stay with us as we dive into the blood-stained evidence, suspicious alibis, and the 20-year quest for justice that still echoes across the Aegean Sea. George Allen Smith IV wasn't just a headline. He was a 26-year-old man with dreams as big as the ocean he would disappear into. Born and raised in Greenwich, Connecticut, George was the pride of his family, hard-working, charismatic, and destined to take over his father's liquor store. His older sister, Bree, remembers him as the funniest person in any room, someone who could light up the darkest days with his smile. George's future seemed brighter than ever when he met Jennifer Hagel, an outgoing and vibrant woman who shared his zest for life. After a 3-year courtship filled with laughter and love, they tied the knot on June 25, 2005, in a lavish ceremony overlooking the bay in Newport, Rhode Island. It was a storybook wedding, elegant, romantic, and filled with hope for the journey ahead. Less than 2 weeks later, the newlyweds set sail on what should have been the trip of a lifetime, a 12-day Mediterranean honeymoon cruise aboard Royal Caribbean's Brilliance of the Seas. But within days, their dream honeymoon would become an international headline, a mystery that would remain unsolved for 2 decades and counting. The evening of July 4th, 2005, began like any other night on the cruise. George and Jennifer, along with fellow honeymooners Paul and Galina Kitnitsky, headed to the ship's casino around midnight. Security camera footage from the casino captured George and Jennifer enjoying themselves, gambling and drinking heavily. By 2:30 a.m., when the casino closed, they made their way to the ship's disco, where the party continued. But tensions soon erupted. According to multiple witnesses, George and Jennifer got into a heated argument on the dance floor. Eyewitnesses reported that Jennifer physically kicked George in the groin before storming out of the disco around 3:30 a.m., leaving him behind.
Rusty actually observes George get up from his seat, approach Jennifer, and there is this exchange of words between them. Rusty does not hear what is being said, but he does observe Jennifer kick George in his groin. George bends over with pain, and Jennifer storms out of the club.
Casino manager Lloyd Boa was rumored to have followed her, though this was later disputed. George, now alone and heavily intoxicated, continued partying with Josh Askin and the Russian-American group. By 3:30 a.m., the disco was closing, and George was in terrible shape, slumped over in a chair, barely able to stand. The men decided to help him back to his cabin. At 3:52 a.m., the ship's key entry log recorded the group entering George and Jennifer's cabin, room 9062. Jennifer was not there. George expressed a desire to find his wife, so the group briefly left the cabin to search for her in the ship's solarium. Finding nothing, they returned George to his cabin at 4:01 a.m., took off his shoes, and laid him on the bed. According to their accounts, the men left shortly after, heading back to their own cabins.
Did you see her? No, she wasn't in the room. She wasn't in the room. We went back and looked for her with him. And then we couldn't find her. She was gone. And then we came back to George's room and put him in bed and we went to sleep. We closed the door. We never saw him. Never saw him again. End of story. That was it.
But what happened next would spark one of the most mysterious and controversial investigations in cruise ship history. At 4 a.m., passengers in neighboring cabins were jolted awake by disturbing sounds. Cleet Hyman, a vacationing deputy police chief staying in the cabin next door, heard what sounded like a drinking game, loud yelling and laughter. But moments later, the tone shifted. He heard what he described as an argument involving 3, possibly 4 male voices on the Smith balcony. Then, a lone male voice repeatedly saying, "Good night! Good night," as if ushering someone out of the room. Hyman watched through his peephole and saw 3 men walking away from the Smith cabin. But if there were 4 men in the room earlier, where was the 4th? In the cabin on the other side of the Smiths, Greg and Pat Lawyer heard what they described as furniture being moved and cupboard doors slamming loudly. Then, after 2 minutes of eerie silence, they heard it. A horrific, thunderous thud that reverberated through the walls. That thud, investigators would later conclude, was the sound of George Smith's body hitting the metal lifeboat canopy below his balcony at approximately 4:20 a.m. At 7:30 a.m., a 16-year-old passenger named Emily Rausch stepped onto her balcony to take photos of the sunrise. Instead, her camera captured something far more chilling: a massive dark red bloodstain smeared across the white canopy of a lifeboat directly below the Smiths' cabin. Ship security quickly traced the blood to room 9062. Inside, they found small streaks of blood on the bed sheets, towels, and carpet. The balcony chair was positioned backward, as if someone had stood on it, and George Allen Smith IV was gone. The ship's captain made an announcement over the intercom. "A person may have gone overboard last night." George's body was never recovered. Royal Caribbean's internal investigation team documented the crime scene, photographing the blood-soaked cabin and the stain on the lifeboat canopy. But questions immediately arose about how the scene was handled. Crew members reportedly cleaned the blood from the canopy before authorities could thoroughly examine it. Jennifer, still in shock and disoriented, was brought to guest relations. She repeatedly told investigators, "I don't remember. I don't remember what happened." She requested to call her father.
We did conduct different experiment, measurement, study. We did check the cabin, the canopy, and the balcony. We did a couple of experiments. However, I'm not going to share with you the detail of the experiment. That's part of agreement. I did find something, okay, but I cannot tell you what we found. We did find something.
Meanwhile, Turkish police rounded up Josh Askin, Rusty Kaufman, and Zachary and Greg Rosenberg for questioning. All 4 men claimed they had simply helped George to bed and left. They insisted they had no idea what happened after they exited the cabin. For George's parents, Maureen and George Smith III, the years since their son's disappearance have been filled with anguish, frustration, and relentless determination. They have never accepted the theory that George's death was an accident. In 2014, nearly a decade after George vanished, the Smith family announced they were offering a $100,000 reward for information leading directly to the arrest and conviction of those responsible. They hoped the financial incentive would finally convince someone to come forward.
I'm confident the FBI knows who those people were, and I think they have the answers. And we have faith that the FBI, will make arrests and will make convictions in my brother's murder.
You do believe this will be solved?
Yes, yes. It's just very painful to have to wait this long. But we've been told by the FBI that they're 100% committed and they will bring us answers.
But on January 9th, 2015, the Smith family received devastating news. The FBI announced they were officially closing the investigation. According to the FBI, there was not sufficient evidence to prove George had been murdered, and that his death may have been the result of an accident. The Smith family was outraged. How do you collect 97,000 pages of an investigation to determine after almost 10 years that an accident may have occurred? Despite the FBI's decision, the Smith family has refused to give up. They continue to maintain their $100,000 reward and have vowed to keep fighting until justice is served. Jennifer Hagel Smith reached a $1.1 million settlement with Royal Caribbean in 2006, far beyond the legally required amount at the time. The Smith family criticized Jennifer for accepting the money and challenged the settlement in court, but their case was ultimately dismissed. Jennifer later remarried in 2009 to financial analyst Jeff Agner, and the couple went on to have 3 children. She has since moved on with her life, working with non-profit organizations and staying out of the public spotlight. As for the 4 men last seen with George, their lives have taken vastly different paths. Josh Askin, Rusty Kaufman, and Zachary Rosenberg have largely disappeared from public view, refusing interviews and maintaining their silence. But Greg Rosenberg's story took a dark and shocking turn. On December 23, 2019, nearly 15 years after George Smith's disappearance, Greg was ambushed and murdered in the driveway of his home in Davie, Florida. He was shot multiple times in what police described as a targeted hit. His murder remains unsolved. Davie police have stated that they believe Greg's death may be connected to the George Smith case, and they hope solving his murder might finally shed light on what happened aboard the Brilliance of the Seas that night. But with Greg gone, the truth may have died with him. As of 2025, it has been 20 years since George Allen Smith IV vanished from his honeymoon cruise. 20 years of unanswered questions. 20 years of pain for a family that still has no closure. 20 years of a bloodstain that refuses to fade from memory. Was George murdered in a robbery gone wrong, as many believe? Did the men he trusted that night turn on him in a moment of greed and violence? Or was it truly a tragic accident, as the FBI concluded? The evidence suggests otherwise. The blood in the cabin, the failed polygraphs, the fabricated alibis, the callous video, the chilling sounds heard by neighbors, the missing watch, the suspicious behavior. All of it points to one conclusion. Something sinister happened in cabin 9062 that night. But without a body, without a confession, without an arrest, the case remains officially unsolved. For the Smith family, hope is fuel. They urge anyone who knew what happened that night, anyone who might remember anything, to step forward. In George's silence, each of us can refuse to let his story fade. If you have any information about George Allen Smith, please contact the tip line at 1-84465-11936 or email georgesmithtipline@gmail.com. The Smith family is still offering a $100,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction. This is the dark truth. We uncover the stories that refuse to stay buried. If this case moved you, if you believe justice must be served, don't let George's memory fade into silence. Subscribe to our channel, share this story, and help us keep fighting for the truth. Hit the like button, leave your thoughts in the comments, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Because some mysteries demand to be solved, some voices demand to be heard, and some families deserve answers. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay vigilant. Stay curious, and never stop seeking the dark truth.